welcome back, everybody. This is your friend Godfather, and today, one of my favorite events, still after a year of playing this game, Foundry, we're up against 1237 War Spartans, and I'm super excited about this one. When I'm looking at just the sheer numbers with the amount of participants and the power rating that is being placed on there, it looks to be really close. And the past couple of Foundries that I haven't even posted on this channel have been terrible. There's one thing about matchmaking where it's just like it doesn't make sense. It's worse when it doesn't make sense and nobody shows up to fight. To me, it's just one of the worst feelings, especially for me, because I look forward to Foundry, I look forward to Canyon, I look forward to Bear. It's a lot of fun for me and the team. I really enjoy getting to battling folks, burning cities, getting burned. I mean, essentially, it's what it's all about. And with the introduction of the Tundra Arms tournament, I've got some comments about that that'll sprinkle out throughout this video. So when we're looking at war, very evenly matched from the sheer numbers perspective. Not really seeing a whole bunch of people here out of the gate, but they're showing up in numbers. So that gets me excited. I went ahead and buffed up to 20s. I don't have any other special perks. Actually, I do on this one. Fortunately, I'm the state president for 1166 at this time. So I get to choose what buff I get to run. But we're going to be deploying the same strategy that many people already do, right? And I've seen a lot of people that have been looking at these videos and checking out how we fight and where we could improve. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from folks that are better than us. A lot of folks that don't deploy the same strategies that we do, now starting to adopt it. So really appreciative of everybody out there. But I'm going to take over from Anchorman today and comment on this Foundry just because I think it's a lot of fun. So hopefully we get to see some action. Right out of the gate, we're going for the highest point facilities or highest point locations. And I'm going to ad-lib most of this stuff anyways. So don't expect the ums and the ahs to be edited out of this whole thing. But I wanted to go through and kind of give you some take by take on each one of these activities. And we assign where we want our leads and the team leads to go to for every single Foundry. And since we're in Generation 7 and we're attacking with predominantly main march being a 60-40, in Foundry, you're moving so fast that you got to just do one formation and stick with it. The idea of being able to really fine-tune formation per marches, it's not really ideal. It gives you a great possibility to keep main marches with the appropriate ratios at home for defense, but most people don't do that anyway. So you're going at it 100% of the time. My job is to hold control and burn. Ace, who's usually the other person that's doing that, is in another location right now doing the very same thing. And unfortunately, the third one that we've added into the mix in this type of, in our Legion 1 Foundry that we do, Beans, unfortunately, because of some scheduling conflicts or miscommunication, couldn't be at this one. So unlike the other one where you saw us burn Sugar, who's Frost Sphere level 1, buffed up, almost maxed whale, and we were able to burn him down to 0. We won't be able to have that same capabilities here from what we're seeing. So when we're attacking, where I go and attack folks, this is where troop count really matters. And I've got, well over, like 5 million troops. I can afford, in order to experiment and kind of poke at certain bases and take those hits. And I've gotten a question before in terms of, oh, you're a whale and you have all these healing speeds. I don't buy healing speeds anymore. I used to beforehand because I would spend a lot of them because I didn't have that many troops. But for me today, I buy them out of the Alliance shop every single day, every single week that it's available. And I keep on storing them. So when I get into a big fight, I've got that as a buffer before I have to spend gems. And on this one, I'm going into the battle with about 1 million gems. I will likely spend anywhere between 250 to 300,000 gems in a solid Foundry fight. And this particular individual here is an FC8. And I was shocked. I spent a lot of time poking at this because it was the first time I've actually been able to do a base fight against a Sphere level 1 and Frost Dragon and other Ministry buff person. And as a almost maxed out whale at FC10, I could not get into his base. So he is 2 full levels below me, and what you can see on the stats there, from a statistical perspective, I should be easily burning him without any problem. So switching over to some lethality here from the presidential buffs. It's a 5-minute cooldown, so I get to experiment with some other ones if I wanted to at some point. Setting my main march at a 60-40 and going right after him and seeing what we're going to get. Using some of those speeds right now in order to make sure that we've got as much as we can. And this guy's doing really good. He's got great gear. He's got solid charms. I'm going against his second march in bouncing. Troop quality is not there. I got him on that, but he's got the quantity for sure. And now we're going to try a rally. Now, from a rally perspective, I'm able to fill at 1.6 million currently towards a city hit. And, Romulus is still a work in progress in order to get that number up. But we're going to do a 1-minute rally, and we're going to see if he's going to stick in that same spot. Most whales, smart whales that don't want to get burned or don't want to take a chance, they would just port. But from what we're seeing, a lot of these bigger players that carry these buffs, they'll take a couple of hits before they start changing their tune. Snowman March, and we hit and we bounce. Now, this is one of those things that I just blew my mind, right? Not only did we bounce and previously with a single march on his folks, he's got great hero gear, he's got everything that you need, but because of those buff stats that he's got going on with the Frost Dragon Tyrant hat, that gives you essentially 5% across the board, it was not doable. So it would have taken us 2 rallies, but you have to consider this. The guy's an FC8. So he's a major threat on the playing field. This is not where the power equation is coming from. Those buffs don't have anything to do with the powers that you see there. And you could see that, he was able to make his buy. And I'm not even going to try to say his name. We're going to call him Sock Puppet just because that's what it looks like. But Sock Puppet doing really well. Got the right hero gear, got the right focus on Romulus to be the main rally lead in his alliance. Obviously, he's carrying the hat, so they've got to have some strategy to us. At this particular point right now, I'm going to be very dependent on how the team performs on their strategy, and I'm going to almost count on that we're going to be doing a lot of looting because you've got somebody that can knock us out, or most of my team will be able to get knocked out by this one player on a single attack. So my change of pace is going to be to whittle down all of his supporting cast as best as possible and see who these other folks are. And they've got a bunch of FC9s on average, and probably have a lot of, they're pretty troop heavy. So now getting to a building with some points. They've obviously got a garrison going on here. We're going to thin out as much as possible. The first thing I'm going to do is going to see if I can try to solo it, which thankfully here I can. Looting is probably the most important part of any attack, and I've probably beat this into my team's head 1,000 times over, where you gotta loot. I have some other more colorful words when I say this in Discord voice chat, and the team gets it. I am very adamant around looting, and the team does a phenomenal job on this one. So as you saw, the moment that popped, I'm calling it out. There's an opportunity to take something. I'm calling out where I'm going. People are ready and watching. And then by the time that we're popping it, you should be seeing a bunch of people start launching loots and or teleporting in order to grab what they need. So you got a pretty sizable player here. Thankfully, they burn easy. And it's okay for me that some of them are getting defeated. It just tells me that they've got a good march inside. They've got a lot of troops inside, and at some point, it's no problem. So my first and second march are probably getting through. I'm not even checking at this point. I'm just looking at, am I doing the damage? Are they burning? And if so, just go in at it. So now that they don't have a lot of troops left, I can almost tell you that we could solo this one. Ported away. Main march is there. Main march is now gone. The garrison is now open. And we don't need a lot of people to port in to loot, but you could see that people are already sending from a distance in order to grab whatever they can. So you tell me, if you're listening to this video today, how does your alliance do on looting? Do you guys have a problem with it? Do people port in? Do they lack the ports in order to be able to get close? Do they start launching it from a distance? Let me know what it is that you guys deal with when it comes to this critical part of point conversion from one team to the other. Now, when some people have asked me, it's like, why don't I use my globe skin? Number one, I think it's a little bit kind of conceited to be using the globe skin. There's only special occasions where it makes sense to use it, or you want to kind of put on the uniform to represent the state. There's plenty of enough ego in this channel, since it's mostly revolving around my gameplay or advice that I'm giving from my own perspective to you guys. So I really don't need to be putting on a show with wearing the globe skin or having the meteor skin. I quite enjoy the skins in the game. This one I think is really cool. That came from the last event with the burning piano. And then of course, the Snowbusters event, Snowman. That's kind of a victory milestone there that people should be getting to around this time. With very little to any frost stars being spent on it.
Barely scratching the surface. This obsession of mine is fueling the furnace. I'm up all night and we're intertwined. Darling, you and I, and my heart beats cold under your control. Just echoes and chronicles. Did I lose my mind in your mercury eyes? And I go in blind beats cold under your control. Just a false echo.
And I don't consider this bullying anybody. This is definitely part of the game. They're not losing any troops or power. And what I'm trying to do is get them to be at nothing so they can either spend their healing speed ups or their gems in order to come back in the fight. But my recommendation for most people that get burnt is the same that you guys are probably already doing, which is you sit out of the fight for 12 minutes. So if you think about it, this is a numbers game. If I can keep our numbers in the fight as long as possible, there's more ability for us to move around, garrison, and make things more difficult on the enemy team. The less people they have, they can't do the same. So they'll either have to go to distance, rely on gathering, like I said, speed, or utilize resources in order to stay in the fight. Whatever you can do to thin out their numbers, just expect it. So if you're a whale, take advantage of it, right? If you're not a whale, understand that it's going to happen. So you have options. You can either buy and spend the teleports. And when I'm saying buying, right, you'd use the gem shop in order to get it at a 50% discount. You get 2, do that every week. Get it from the mystery shop in order to get more teleports, in order to use those. Maybe from a strategy perspective, make sure that you are holding the transit station so you can accumulate teleports throughout the fight for free that allow you to move around. But if you're going to get hit by a whale, spend the 4,000 gems to get out of there. It all depends on how competitive you want to be. At the end of the day, if there's a transition between one team to another on a node that has ammunition points in it, it's going to pop, and then you're going to be able to pick it up. Now, the ratio is not 100% like it used to be. It's now more around 50% if I remember correct, but it's still a considerable amount of swing points. And because we are dealing with a bunch of folks that have some power, that we should be pretty even on most all the stats, this is where the game's going to be won. It's definitely on looting. And you saw that immediately when the building got popped. Every single base standing around that location sent to go loot. And I can't enforce that enough. If you're not looting, if you see your team not looting, you have full permission to yell at them and make sure that it sticks. We got plenty of quotes on how much I've yelled at my team to loot, but they do a wonderful job. And I think that in this Foundry, at the very end of it, I gave them exemplary kudos with how well they executed on loots. I remember one time where it was a big point location, and you'll see it in the video, like 5 people poured it in proximity to that looting node and took it all within a split second, which was just, it was a proud papa moment for sure. Okay, so when you're looking at strategies here in Foundry, depending on what your team composition is going to be, you're going to deploy different things. Now, if you're and I'm going to take this kind of conversely, right? I'm going to look at the really, really big alliances that have a big top-heavy firepower. So you've got 3, 4, 5 whales. You've got a lot of players that are of substantial power that you can essentially assign individual missions and tasks to, and then I'm going to work my way all the way down to the people that don't have any. Whales are definitely your firepower in any battle, in any event. So if there's nobody on your team that's a whale, you're going to have to understand that you're going into battle with an unfavorable outcome potentially. Unless you're deploying some very, very smart strategy, it becomes harder to do that, but at the same token, it's hard to be a whale. So I think it balances itself out in some way, shape, or form. Now, the game's matchmaking can make that completely unfair, and I get that. We've been in those positions early on, and sometimes you're matched against somebody that's way too easy, and it doesn't make it any fun for anybody. So anyways, so if you've got your 4 or 5 whales in a single legion, then my recommendation is that you assign teams. So give each whale 2 or 3 locations in order to guard and hold and protect. There's going to be people that are going to be porting in, trying to take something. By giving them those assignments, they don't have to move as much. They can save a whole bunch of resources. They're going to be accumulating points via hold times, and Bob's your uncle. I think that strategy works extremely well for those top-heavy, where you're really looking at rally action as opposed to individual base attacks. When you have a top-heavy average within an alliance, a whale attacking any player on that is going to lose troops over time, and the game favors defense. And now with those frost spheres, you can have 4 or 5 people huddled around one single whale and borrow the same stats to protect their base against city attacks. And it works in Foundry as well. You can see as I'm clicking into different players or I'm clicking into myself, that area of protection is being displayed there. And you can see that with this guy again. I forget what I'm nicknaming him, but it might change across the board. What are you going to call him? The FTT guy. So when I'm attacking his city, those buffs are effective, right? With his main march, attack on his city, the number of troops that he has, I can't get through that. I looked at all the reports post. It's just amazing what these hats can do from a stats perspective for you, which is why when you're developing coalitions for Frost Dragon, this is what people look in exchange. If you want our state's help, we get a hat. And well, they need that hat for SVS, for fighting events and things of that nature. And it makes a huge difference, especially when they get stacked with presidential ministry positions or the president position itself. So yeah, any way that you look at it, these guys can focus in on those bases, on those nodes, and spend very little to no effort in order to hold the whole thing locked down. It's not a sexy strategy, but it is an extremely effective strategy at that. If you've got the ability to now send firefighters, or you get to send your attackers, you've got one or two people. That's all it really takes in order to harass and hurt a lot of your opponent in a very short amount of time. You can take out the entirety of a team's third of their battle force that they're dependent on for gathering and or looting within a matter of minutes, and then they're sitting out of the fight for 12. Right? They can be taking buildings with little to no effort, not having to do a lot of rallies. So you can shut out an entire team, very much like what we did here. We're about halfway through the battle and they don't have any buildings left. They just took one, as I was saying that, but all those points transitioned over to us and they haven't really grown. And we're almost at, a little bit over twice as many points than what they have currently. On the flip side of that, if you're against a team that is this big, the recommendation is that you stack and rack, right? You are not going to be holding buildings with one person garrison. You're not going to be taking buildings with one person attacks. You're going to have to move as a group and rally as fast as possible into a single node and reinforce each other while you're doing that. So take your team of 5 or 10, go to one place, set your rally, reinforce each other as best as possible, outlast that rally, take it and loot what comes off in order to get those points. If you don't do that, you really don't have a chance. But you can pepper and really go to unpredictable locations and have roughly about 30 seconds to get set up before the enemy can respond to that. And that's how quick it's gonna go. When you're in a lockdown position, the moment people show up to fight or can be burnt on a map, that location is going to get shared and you're going to have some people on you either marching from across the map or teleporting right next to you in order to kill all your folks. But if you can reinforce each other quickly, you're in a much better position to do what needs to be done. All right, so if you don't have those top that you can hold at, you're more around our league of folks where we've got, one or two folk, we've got, some up and comers. We're pretty, I would say, well-rounded in the terms of like the competitive spirit and keeping the game fun. You're not going to have those, mega whales helping you out across the board. So for us, we have to divide and conquer. We set up a couple buildings in order to hold up front. And then as we take on buildings, we reduce the number of folks that we have in the garrison until we reach some sort of critical mass or stability. If there's not a lot of movement going on within buildings, we'll end up sitting in one place and then sending our marches across the map to fully garrison a building. And that is for the hopes of being to prevent somebody from taking it easily. It doesn't mean that it's going to be impenetrable, but it's going to take somebody some level of effort for some time in order to take that building, which gives us enough time for us to decide on how we want to respond to that threat. So here's a perfect example. We've got a building. You've got the FTT guy there. Another person just got really close. We've got a full garrison in there. Not much needs to be done. There's no points there. We can let them have it if we wanted to and then move on. There's no point in fighting for something that's not going to give you any benefit. You do get the hold time, but if your control points, your control time doesn't go all the way through so you can actually get control points, then there's really no need to fight at a location And I think that they did very well there. They noticed that, they realized that, and then they're moving on someplace else where they can get the points. All right. So on the flip of it, if you're dealing against a team against us, let me give you the strategy that I would deploy against folks like us. Number one, you need to have your strongest people chasing their strongest people. If you're not on the offensive, you've got to protect. So offensive play is just what I said. You can deploy the same.
I'm proud of you, you know that. I hope you do.
Same thing and just kind of do it in different locations. But if you've got more than plenty in order to do both, I would always recommend that somebody's chasing that whale around and reinforcing the cities and the buildings that they're attacking. You're essentially just shadow boxing this individual throughout the entire map and getting to it to a point where they get frustrated, where they're less effective and you're essentially canceling their abilities to do anything out as best as possible. Protecting your players, keeping them in the fight, protecting your buildings and gathering more points, and then moving through the entirety of the event, making sure that these people can't do any harm to you. It requires a lot of communication, but it's definitely a way to do it. So now if you're on the other end of the spectrum where you don't have the whales, where you don't have your the players that have the ability to burn, hopefully your matchmaking is a lot easier and it actually gives you somebody that's comparable to you. You could really check on who you can burn, pick on the smallest guy in order to get those points and get him out of the fight. It happens less often. So, and to me, in my personal opinion, those are the most fun fights when everything is equal and it becomes all around strategy, not just sheer amount of frost stars spent on your account in order to get bigger, stronger, better, badder, faster, right? So on those small level plays, when you're deploying maximum strategy, it's all about the numbers. It's a numbers game. If you can hold a garrison, put the right heroes in play, all of those things take effect. In my opinion, the lower power, high number of participant battles are actually the most strategic as compared to everybody else until you get to the upper echelon and you're doing like 10 whales versus 10 whales. That also becomes very strategic in nature. But when you have balance of power, strategy is your key winner. So for those guys, you're going to find that you're going to have the same model of taking, looting, defending, looting if you lose it, in order to keep as minimal shift of points from those types of events as possible, right? So you're focusing on holding the buildings and looting whatever pops from them as long as you can. The two areas where close battles are going to make the difference is, and I'm going to say this word again, like looting, but gathering is also a big one. The moment that the gathering nodes pop open, they are as equal of play as if you're holding the center. If you can get as many nodes as possible, and for many folks that are still new in the strategy or ignore gathering as something that's not important, in Foundry, gathering is huge. You can get 70 to 80,000 additional points with just gathering, and anybody can do that. People can do that even from distance, being in the safe zone. So all they got to do is at the moment that those mines pop and they become available, you're sending out your marches to get it. Smart players, smart alliances understand this, and they will constantly be checking on people gathering, and they will pop you out, right? They will take you out of gathering so you don't accumulate those easy points. Use your gems in order to speed back and speed back in. That usually happens at a rotation. I haven't seen anybody, if anyone, really focus so hard on the gathering nodes that it prevents you from getting any points at all. It is something that people pass through because the action and the attention is actually on the city hits, on the attacks, on defending your players, on the center being taken just like it is right now with the rally, on making sure that you've got whatever it takes in order to, you're focused on something that's completely not gathering is the point that I'm trying to make. So gathering is probably where you're going to win it. Definitely highly recommended that if you're in that balanced strategy style gameplay, that you put a focus on gathering and give kudos to those folks that are in your Foundry Legion and score those points just as well as you would highlight your bigger players killing or destroying 1 million troops or more in one hit. So the FDT hat, like I said before, it's only good, when it gives you that 5% all around. It really does stack up with your Frost Sphere globe skin thing. They could have done a little bit better job as to what they were going. I'm not too particularly sure if this person here on the right has a globe and has that benefit already on their own. But if she would have just been positioned one square over, she would have had that benefit. And there's not much to it. So on the attacking side, it's no contest. He can't hurt me at all. He bounces off really hard and doesn't take anything of anything at all. The landslide difference. So even against I don't even know what march that is. That's probably like a non-existent march where they're going against my bear heroes and some defensive heroes there, but they can't get through it. So when you're leveraging that FDT hat, what you have, if you're a bigger player, I think it's phenomenal. But smaller players like this that can get that hat, that's a big game changer. I mean, this individual essentially was tanking me from all the attacks that I was giving. So this level 9 player, let's see if she's Frost Sphere. See? Just some healing speeds that I got for free. So when you're looking at troops, and this is why people that are maxed out still develop troops, just sheer quantity of troops is kind of like your meat shield. It's a defensive mechanism. It allows you to stay into the fights longer. Big events like Frost Dragon Tyrant now allow you to have 1 full hour after the event to heal through more than what you have in your hospital bed. So you could essentially have millions and millions of troops and never have to heal throughout the fight, which requires one less distraction from focusing on those 1 minute sped up type fights in those big events. When you're dealing with something like this in Foundry, well, there's no risk. If you don't heal your troops, you get them back whenever you leave. So all you want to do is continue to attack as best as possible. And I'm seeing more and more smaller players have a lot more troops to benefit them in Canyon and in Foundry. And I think it's more effective in Canyon because it takes longer to go through that number of troops, despite them being much, much weaker. It does kind of slow down progress, where if somebody has 1.2 billion as opposed to 700 million, well, the time difference is almost double in order for you to get through all those troops and move on to the next person in that queue. And that's specifically for Canyon. When you're talking about something like this, if they were smart with that number of troops in just one reinforcement from a bigger player, they can essentially tank and attack without much risk. If they don't, they just become a point feeder, and all the whales love them, where they can get hit and lose 2 million troops in one shot, and now you're out for 12 minutes. So it's a double-edged sword on Foundry. It's going to be the same thing in Tundra, double-edged sword there. Be mindful of what you're doing. My recommendation is stay lean and mean as a state. If you got a lot of big spenders on troops just because they want to get to 1 billion for whatever reason before the rest of their stats are maxed, I think it's a waste of time. So do as you please. There's some pros and cons to having it. I think that there's far more cons for being troop heavy prior to being maxed on your other stats, excluding pets and island, of course. Now, I know that we've won this already. I mean, we're at 310,000 points. We control the full map. They haven't really posed any threat whatsoever. They're able to take some things. They're not doing very well on looting at all. So this is a great opportunity for you to experiment. And I learn a ton from attacking different cities in Foundry like this. Once again, there's no risk in order to losing troops. Unlike if you were to do this in regular gameplay, there's a penalty where you're going to lose 69,000 troops right out of the gate, regardless of who you're attacking. And essentially, you're going to be losing a lot of troops. So this Frost Dragon Tyrant hat definitely had me interested. It's one of the few times, if ever, I would have the opportunity to attack head on an FDT hat like this and see what the results were going to be. So I can change and see what makes the most sense. Is it lethality? Is it having the president buff and having the 5% stats across the board? Maybe it's more dealing with capacity if we were going to be doing rallies. To be quite honest, the FTT hat plus the sphere, the frost sphere effect, it's not even worth it. I think it's a great defensive strategy. That person is essentially untouchable. I would have to burn my entire army in order to have an opportunity to burn him. And you could see that from some of these reports where it's not even his main maxed out march that he has. It's his second or even his third march, and it's bouncing. My first march is bouncing. So very little reward given for this. Like I said, lots of experimentation to be able to go after these cities. One thing that if this player ever watches this video that I would have recommended is that he could have positioned his people or positioned himself better to protect his folks that are getting burned like this right in front of him by moving, right? Giving that frost sphere buff to as many people as possible is a benefit from a defensive positioning stance. And he could have reinforced them and shared that FTT hat statistics, essentially making them, as strong as him. I would be curious to see if the battle would have been a lot different that way. If they would have played it smarter and positioned themselves in a way from a defensive, more aggressive standpoint, if they would have had more success in this battle overall. And look at this. I mean, essentially, she's down to 0. And he finally reacts to put in his little march. But because he's so far away, on the very next attack that I have against him, he just gets popped out, right? Not even close. And they can attack that all day long. It's already garrisoned. One person is not going to be able to take it anymore. The FTT hat's not going to be able to take it anymore just on his little march. Like I said, it's more defensive in nature. And he's just not quite there yet from a power perspective, though I would assume that this individual is pretty high up there in power rankings against, in comparison to the rest of the folks in his state. So you see, once again, what I'm explaining, right? I position myself in a place in order to protect poison here, as opposed to being farther on the other side. Ace has got coverage on one, I've got coverage on the other, and it makes them impenetrable. Now, I told Poison to move out because I was taking my march away, and I needed her someplace else. So communication is king. Make sure that everybody's on voice or paying attention to the chat that's going in, the squad chat that happens in Foundry. You'll find yourself being far more effective if there's 1 or 2 people calling out the gameplay and the rest of the folks knowing who to listen to based off of the team and roles that they're assigned to. And look at that, almost 18 million points in the Foundry. My max has been 21, and it's not only myself that almost has 18 million. Ace is right behind me with almost 18 million as well. That just tells you how we're performing. And on this video, as opposed to some of the other ones that you saw where you had the split screen with Ace, he and I are not finding each other as often. We're doing a much better job at spreading out and attacking different folks. But this is the end of this Foundry. I hope that you enjoyed the commentary, the more insight into some strategy as to what we deploy, what you could deploy. It's been a lot of fun working with many of you guys out there that are watching the channels and giving me your own tips. So thank you very much for that. If you ever need any advice on what to do for your heroes, your pets, your experts, your hero gear, or whatnot, I'm available to you. If you're a Prime subscriber to the channel, Super Chat user to the channel, you will get priority over anybody else. I get tons of questions all the time before I even make these videos. So Generation 8 is coming up for our state. Got recommendations for you, depending on what you got going on. This was a phenomenal Foundry. The team did an amazing job looting, and we'll look at these numbers here in a second when we look at the point details. But looting was on point, gathering was on point. Everybody was moving around where they needed to move around. Everyone got their minimum points that they needed to max out the rewards on this one. And just absolutely hands down, one of the best, fun, evenly matched fights that we've had in a long time. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. And as always, stay spicy.